Lynn Dunn just threw Stephanie White out. Right under the bus, and Fever fans are completely going crazy right now. The front office drama in Indiana right now just took Messi to a whole new level. And this might change everything for. This is Caitlin Clark's future. What do you think is significantly bigger than you thought? Think about how drama in the front office affects how coaches use their best players. So, here we are again, folks, and your boys had to break down this absolute circus that's occurring in Indianapolis right now. Lynn Dunn just went nuclear on social media, and let me tell you something: when front office executives start calling out coaches publicly, that's when you know the ship is seriously taking on water. Now, before we get into this mess, let's be real about what's been occurring with this Fever team. Everyone thought they were going to be title contenders this year. After bringing in all these veteran players, the Fever targeted players with a lot of playoff experience like Dana Bonner, Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, and Sydney Carlson. Sounds fine on paper, right? Incorrect. This squad has been more unreliable than a dial-up internet.
So I had a film
connection
breakdown
from
prepared today, but I'm actually
2003.
going to go a different direction. This is a rant because we have to talk about the state of this Indiana Fever team, and I'm here to bring the reality to all you Fever fans. This team is not a championship team. They're not a championship team. They're nowhere near close to a championship team because every team that is a championship team can play defense. This Indiana Fever team has no defense, and that's like the farthest of their problems. Their offense looked really bad today, and Caitlin Clark obviously didn't shoot the basketball well, but I'm not going to blame this loss on Caitlin Clark, even though obviously they would have won if she would have shot the ball well. My whole thing is you were up when Caitlin Clark wasn't shooting the ball well. You had a double-digit lead in that first half while Caitlin Clark was clanking every single three. She was 2 for 9 from the field, and you were still confidently beating this Aces team. The reason you lost was not because Caitlin Clark didn't score the basketball. The reason you lost is because you stopped doing what was working, what works for the Indiana.
The real issue here isn't just about winning and losses, it's about how they're using Caitlin Clark, and honestly, it's getting outrageous. You've got the most dynamic offensive player in the league, someone who single-handedly revolutionized the entire panorama of women's basketball, and what does Stephanie White do? She takes the ball out of her hands and sprints, thus
Biggest thing is
boring
what we
motion
have to do as a
offense
staff
that
to get her
makes
better looks, like higher quality looks. Every game plan is going to be to make her score inside the three-point line, right? And the different ways that they're going to do that. Physicality, coverage, showing bodies, all the different things. And, we have to do a better job of getting her higher quality looks. I'm not worried about Caitlin's shot.
Let me explain something to y'all about this motion offense crap. It's basically a system where everyone stands around passing the ball back and forth till someone hopefully gets open. It's the kind of offense your nephew's middle school team runs when they don't know what more to do. The problem is when you have someone like Caitlin Clark on your team performing a motion offense is like buying a Ferrari and only driving.
She's already been able to accomplish in the spotlight, tremendous spotlight. And I also think that she's going to adjust to the pros better than people think she is. Everybody wondered if Aaliyah Boston would, and look what she did. Aaliyah had good strength when she came in. She came from an outstanding program. She was smart. She was great work ethic, and Clark has all of that too. When you watch Clark, you think, how does she hit those threes from the logo? How does she make those great passes? She's physically strong. She's got great strength in her legs, in her core, and in her hands. And so I'm expecting her to have an impact on the WNBA.
What Clark did at Iowa, she operated a read and react offensive, where she was the major decision maker, the engine that made everything work. In their recent win versus the Liberty, between her score and assist, she accounted for 54 of the Fever's points. That's what happens when you genuinely let the woman do what she does best, instead of shoving her into some cookie cutter mechanism. But here's where it gets very hot. Lynn Dunn, who supposedly moved to a senior advisor post, which sounds like corporate speak for we're pushing you aside, but don't want you to. Resigned, thought she'd had enough. She posted on social media about how you can't expect players to perform things you don't drill in practice. No, on the surface, that sounds like standard coaching advice, yet when you read between the lines, it's quite evident. She's casting shade at how Stephanie White is handling this team. The timing of this post is what makes it so evident. This followed right after another poor performance where the offense looked lost, where players were hanging around not knowing what to do, where Caitlin Clark appeared frustrated, trying to make anything happen in a system that doesn't meet her skill set. It's like seeing someone try to fit a square peg into a round hole gradually. Something's going to shatter, and let's talk about what the supporters are saying. Since they're not holding back, one fan straight up asked why they gave Katie Lou Samuelson $180,000. Another stated, the fans are turning against Stephanie White. These aren't casual observers, they are the people who buy tickets, who watch every game, who've been backing this franchise, enduring years of mediocrity. When they start challenging the coach this early in the season, that's a red flag bigger than the one they wave at NASCAR races. The frustrating part is that this was all predictable. Some of us called this exact situation months ago. We said that kidnapping Caitlin Clark and forcing her into a motion offense was going to be a catastrophe. We mentioned that you don't take the most inventive, dynamic playmaker in basketball and transform her into simply another cog in the machine. Yet here's what really gets me heated up about this complete incident. Stephanie White was fined for criticizing officiating, but maybe she should be more concerned about the offensive she's running than the refs. You want to know what's really hurting this team? It's not the officials, it's the fact that they're wasting the prime years of a generational talent because they want to prove they're wiser than everyone else. Let's look at the numbers. Since stats don't lie, Indiana's offensive rating is 107.5 with Clark on the floor and 82.2 in 20 minutes with her off it. That's a 25-point differential. You know what that tells you? It tells you that this squad flows through Caitlin Clark, and when you take her out of the equation or restrict her impact, everything falls apart. The motion offensive is supposed to create player mobility and reactions, but what it truly generates is misunderstanding and wasted chances. When you have someone who can view the court like Clark can, who can make passes that other players can't even comprehend, why would you want to take that away? It's like having Steph Curry on your squad and telling him he may only shoot from the free throw line. And don't even get me started on this getting the ball out of Caitlin's hands philosophy. This isn't some rookie who needs to learn the game. Guy is someone who guided Iowa to back national championship games, who shattered scoring records, who made women's basketball appointment television. You don't fix what isn't broken, but evidently nobody told Stephanie White that the real kicker in all this is that Lynn Dunn knows what championship basketball looks like. She was part of the coaching staff when the Fever won it. So in 2012, she realizes what it takes to establish a winning culture, and when someone with that kind of encounter starts doubting what's happening, you better pay attention. What makes this even more aggravating is that we're seeing other teams figure out how must employ their star players effectively. Look at what Las Vegas did with AIA Wilson, or what New York does with Sabrina. They design their systems around their best players, not the other way around. They recognize that when you have exceptional talent, you maximize that talent. You don't belittle it. The Fever had all these great plans heading into the season. Clark told media members prior Indiana's opener that her expectation was for them to try to win a championship. But how are you going to win a title when you're not even employing your greatest player effectively? It's like trying to win the Indy 500 with a speed limit. And speaking of championships, let's talk about what this implies for the future. The WNBA is more competitive than it's ever been. You've got the Liberty looking dominant, the Aces are always deadly, and teams like Las Vegas and Connecticut know how to win if the Fever wants to compete with certain teams. They ought to cease playing it safe and start playing to their strengths. The motion offense might work for certain teams, however, this isn't some team. This is a squad created around a once-in-a-generation talent who can transform the game with a single pass or shot. When you have that kind of player, you don't make them fit your system, you design your system around them. What's actually troubling is the timing of all this drama. Stephanie White stepped away from the team recently to attend to personal matters. Now, personal matters are personal matters, and I'm not going to conjecture about someone's private life. However, when your coach is dealing with personal troubles while your front office is publicly challenging your strategies, that's not exactly a recipe for success. The fans deserve better than this. They've went through years of rebuilding, years of disappointment, years of witnessing this franchise struggle to find its identity. Finally, they obtain a player who can change everything, who can make them relevant again. And instead of embracing that, the organization seems determined to overthink it. This isn't just about basketball strategy, it's about organizational philosophy. Do you trust your top player to make plays, or do you try to control everything from the sideline? Do you tailor your system to your talent, or do you urge your talent to adapt to your system? These are essential questions that every great firm has to answer accurately. The worst part is that we're watching this play out in real time, and it feels like seeing a slow-motion car smash. You can see the problems, you can see the remedies, but for some reason the folks in command are determined to make this rougher than it has to be. Lynn Dunn's post could seem like a simple thing, merely a few comments on social media, but it represents something much bigger. It symbolizes a fracture in the organization, a lack of uniformity in the vision, and a profound disagreement about how to use the most critical player in franchise history. Now, let's go into the really delicious section of this whole disaster, the Connecticut Sun connection. Remember, Stephanie White simply came from coaching the Sun, where she ran that exact identical motion offense that everyone's whining about. The Sun had success with it, undoubtedly, but they had different personnel. They didn't have Caitlin Clark. They didn't have someone who could single-handedly orchestrate an offense and make everyone around her better. But White comes to Indiana and seeks to adopt the same system she utilized in Connecticut, completely ignoring the fact that she now has the most dynamic point guard in the league. It's like a chef who only knows how to cook pasta trying to cook with Wagyu beef. You're wasting costly ingredients by treating them like anything regular. The motion offensive philosophy is all about equality, about making sure everyone touches the ball, approximately producing chances for role players. That seems great and democratic, but basketball isn't a democracy, it's a meritocracy. When you have someone who's definitely the best player on the court, someone who can develop shots for herself and others that none else can produce, you feed that player the ball and get out of the way. Look at how Clark played at Iowa under Lisa Bluer. That read and react system was excellent for her because it let her to use her basketball IQ, her court eyesight, her ability to make split-second decisions that other players can't make. She was averaging around 8 assists per game despite scoring 28 points, since the system boosted her talents instead of attempting to hide them. But now in this motion crime, Clark is basically being asked to be a role player in her own team's offense. She's intended to move the ball, set screens, and wait for the mechanism to create her opportunity. Instead of creating opportunity for herself and others, it's backwards, it's counterproductive, and it's exactly why Lynn Dunn felt the urge to stand up. And let's speak about the impact this is having on Clark's second-year development. This is meant to be the year where she takes that next step where she goes from Rookie of the Year to MVP candidate. Instead, she's stuck, trying to learn a system that doesn't fit her skill set while coping with the dissatisfaction of not being able to play the way she knows she can play. The numbers don't lie about what happens when Clark is permitted to run the offense while she's on the court and has the ball in her hands. The Fever's offensive efficiency jumps considerably when she's off the court or limited to being a spot-up shooter. In this motion offense, the club struggles to score consistently. What makes this even more irritating is that we've seen flashes of what this team can be when they let Clark cook in. Stunning triumph versus the Liberty when White finally let Clark take control in the fourth quarter. She went off for 32 points and completely transformed the game. That's what happens when you quit trying to fit a square peg into a circular hole and just let elite talent be elite. The Dana Bonner incident adds another layer to this mess. Bonner has been away from the team for personal reasons, which is perfectly understandable and should be revered, but her absence also emphasizes how dependent this motion offense depends on having particular individuals in specific roles. When you build your system around ball movement and player movement instead than individual talent, you become exposed when critical pieces aren't available. Compare that to a system designed around Clark's strengths, whether Bonner is there or not. If Sophie Cunningham is healthy or not, Clark can still create offense for herself and others. That's the beauty of having a sublime talent. They can overcome personnel changes and injuries because they're not depending on everyone else doing exactly the correct thing at exactly the correct time. The social media element of this complete controversy tells you how deep the frustration runs when front office executives start subtweeting coaches, when supporters are openly questioning personnel decisions, when former athletes are weighing in on offensive philosophy. That's not usual organizational behavior. That's a hint that something is fundamentally broken in the communication and decision-making process. Lynn Dunn's tweet regarding drilling what you expect players to accomplish isn't merely regarding practicing preparation, it's about philosophical alignment. If your front office believes in one method and your coach is implementing a fully distinct approach, those conflicting visions are going to create issues that go much beyond X's and O's. The Katie Lou Samuelson contract that fans are complaining about is another sign of even larger difficulty when you're paying role players significant money while misusing your franchise player. It sends a message concerning organizational priorities that doesn't make sense. It's like buying pricey backup singers while asking your headliner to lip sync. The timing of Clark's injury earlier this season also highlighted how inadequately developed this aggressive system is. While she was out for those